Story 1. Years back in Omaha, Nebraska, a guy was riding a bicycle down the street when, out of nowhere, a huge tree limb fell and killed him. There were no winds. It was a calm day. Story 2. An Air Force KC-135 crashed in 1987 while practicing for an air show, killing all crew on board. One crew member of that aircraft was not flying that day. I don't recall why. However, he decided to go out to the airfield and watch the show, and the mishap aircraft crashed on him. Story 3. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, who experienced both atomic bombs. He was on a business trip in Hiroshima when it was bombed, then went home to Nagasaki and was there when it was bombed. Although he suffered from injuries and radiation poisoning, he survived until the age of 93. Story 4. One day at my mom's workplace, a colleague she worked with switched shifts with her. He told her that he wanted to switch because he had plans to go somewhere for dinner that night with his wife. That night, a group of men came into the store, robbed the place, and murdered my mom. Over the years, we would hear rumors that he knew and had been threatened before by one of these murderers, and that was why he didn't want to work that night. But nothing could ever be proven. Story 5. The Horizon Post Office scandal was suddenly made worse due to one of these. It was big news when it happened, but just another random political scandal that would probably be forgotten by the press. Same old, same old. Then, a television series based on the scandal was made by the British TV channel ITV, which had two major timing issues. First of all was the scheduling of when the drama series aired. It was expected just to fill out the airwaves during a lull period and be a simple drama series. But the lull period they chose was the Christmas holidays when most people were on holiday. Still not expected to be big numbers, but it caught a lot of people's attentions. Then, around the period the series aired, a slew of new and startling revelations into the widespread miscarriage of justice of thousands of innocent people came out, ranging from the fact that the post office skipped the police and pushed convictions they knew were false through the courts, or how the post office's main investigators for these false convictions were incentivized to get convictions for financial bonuses, establishing a clear bias. The scandal is still going strong 4 months since the series aired and isn't slowing down in the slightest. Also, a lot of the actors are incredibly famous in the UK, and when they read the script for the show, they were so outraged that it became a passion project which they took reduced pay to stretch out the budget as far as possible. Story 6. Richard Jewell. In the 1996 Olympics, the right timing was him finding the backpack. The wrong time was when he had to defend himself from accusations that he was the bomber. Story 7. Aeschylus was a Greek playwright who had heard a prophecy that he would die from a falling object. Subsequently, he spent as much time outdoors as he could, where an eagle dropped a tortoise on his head and killed him. Story 8. 3 of these caused the Watergate scandal. First of all, the guard who blew the lid on it. He had come around to do the rounds earlier and saw a door to a service stairwell with tape holding the latch open. Thinking a service worker had left it there by mistake, he removed the tape and closed the door, and returned to do an earlier sweep than expected. When he saw the tape put on the door again, and knowing there was no maintenance that night, he called the police, arresting 5 burglars breaking into the Democratic National Committee offices. Second was the sentry. Alfred Baldwin was meant to be watching out for trouble from the Howard Johnson's motor lodge across the street, meant to call in if any police suddenly showed up out of the blue. Unfortunately, he found Attack of the Puppet People was airing on TV during his lookout and was too engrossed to realize the police were arriving until they had already surrounded the others. Third was one of the burglars failing to do a minor task that was completely unrelated to the heist. Nixon accomplice and former Central Intelligence Agency officer E. Howard Hunt asked one of the burglars to drop an envelope off in the mail, which he didn't do. When the burglars were arrested, this letter was seized and was a check for a small tip he owed his country club. This tied the scandal directly to the president in the White House and caused the biggest political scandal in the US. Story 9. Austin Hatch survived 2 separate plane crashes that killed 5 members of his immediate family. In 2003, he endured a small plane crash that killed his mother, sister, and brother. His father, an anesthesiologist, was the pilot of the aircraft. Austin's father lived to fly again, which eventually turned to tragedy. In 2011, he piloted another small plane to a fatal crash. Austin's father and stepmother did not survive. Austin, however, made it out again. He was in a coma for 8 weeks and suffered a number of other serious injuries that made total recovery seem doubtful. I feel so bad for him. Anyway, now he is a famous basketball player. Story 10, Wile E. Coyote. Any number of times. Boulders, trains, pianos, vehicles, you name it, he probably got killed by it at least once. Story 11. A friend of mine had just moved into a new home. She was murdered in her home 1 week later. Someone hired a hitman to murder the previous homeowner, and the hitman killed her instead. Story 12. My brother was caught twice in different married women's beds. He did not know they were married. I know that because I was at the bar with him both times. The first time he got beaten up severely, and the second time the guy just filmed it on his phone. Story 13. When my sister was in high school, she was driving and a woman in another car passed her, going in the same direction. A quarter mile up the road, they both stopped at a red light. A fully loaded cement truck going through the green light on the cross street lost control as it was going through the intersection and crashed into the driver's side door of the woman in front of my sister, killing the woman instantly. My sister only had bumps and scratches, but her car was totaled from the flying debris. My sister got lucky because the woman passed her and wound up in the wrong place at the wrong time, instead of my sister. This happened in the early 80s. I still think about that sometimes. Story 14. William Mayberry, 1985. He was driving his 1971 Toyota Celica by Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport when Delta Flight 191 was hit by wind shear while on approach. The plane was pushed down to Highway 114 and the left engine hit his car, killing him. A second earlier or later would have been just a crazy story. Story 15 could be viewed from both perspectives, but I always think about the man who was caught cheating because of the September 11th attacks. He was supposed to be at work in one of the Twin Towers that day, but instead, he was at a hotel with his affair partner. They were too preoccupied with each other all morning to know what was happening. But after the first plane hit, his wife called to ask if he was okay. He said, "Yeah, why wouldn't I be? Oops." I say either way because though he got caught and ruined his marriage, at least he was alive. Story 16. Ron Goldman was returning some glasses and sunglasses to Nicole Brown Simpson, but she was being attacked by O.J. Simpson, so Ron was also harmed. Story 17. When I was a teenager, I stopped at a closed petrol station around 3 a.m. after a road trip with my friends to clean up my car. I spent about 5 minutes and left. The petrol station got robbed about 15 minutes later, and police officers turned up at my house to arrest me the following day. Story 18. Mick Ferris, a London coach driver, died instantly when a window fell out of a high-rise building and struck him. Story 19. The People on When They See Us on Netflix. That series hit so hard for me. It changed so much of my perception. I had such a hard time watching it that I didn't want to watch it again. But I wanted to share that different view on life, so I had to watch it 1 or 2 times again after. But it hits just as hard no matter how many times I watch it. Story 20. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria went to Sarajevo, an initial assassination attempt failed, but several people were injured by a grenade. Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, decided to visit the victims in the hospital. On the way, their driver took a wrong turn down a street where Gavrilo Princip, one of the failed assassins from earlier, happened to be standing. Princip seized the opportunity to murder Franz Ferdinand and Sophie, sparking the July crisis that eventually led to World War I. Story 21. A plane crash in Muncie, Indiana, a few weeks ago, injured 2 people who were walking on a path. Story 22. I saw this on TikTok a few days ago. A scammer called an older man, demanding thousands of dollars, or else he would come to his house and shoot him. The older man was terrified, and when a random car pulled into his driveway, he took matters into his own hands. Even though the car was just an Uber driver that his son had called, the man was not convinced and shot the Uber driver dead. Now, the man may go to jail for life. Absolutely horrible. Story 23. One time when I was home from the Marines, I was powdering my balls after my shower, with my knees basically behind my ears, and my sister walked in and we made eye contact. Well, that was quite the unexpected reunion. It was her place and I thought she was gone. Laugh out loud. It's a true testament to the unbreakable bond of siblinghood. Even in the most, shall we say, compromising situations, we laugh about it to this day. Story 24. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, he survived 2 nuclear bombings in World War II. Tsutomu Yamaguchi. Story 25. Archduke Franz Ferdinand happened to have a changed route, whereupon he encountered Gavrilo Princip. Earlier botched assassination attempts had failed, but Princip seized this unforeseen opportunity, setting off World War I. Story 26. A Goose, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, March 30th, 1999. Fabio explains what happened when a goose struck him on a roller coaster. Story 27. Children near me years ago threw a frozen turkey off an overpass. It hit a woman driving below. She survived, but her face and upper body were severely injured. What the heck? Story 28. This makes me think of the Umbrella Man from the John F. Kennedy assassination in Dallas. He popped out a black umbrella right when Kennedy drove by, somewhat concurrently with the assassination, and there have been all kinds of crazy theories about him over the years. For example, his umbrella contained a flechette and he was the real assassin, etc. It was a sunny day, so why the umbrella? Yet there he is in various photos and film of the day. It turns out he was mildly protesting John F. Kennedy's father, Joe Kennedy, and his actions at the start of World War II. And the umbrella being a favorite prop of Neville Chamberlain or something. So this guy at the right place but the very wrong time for his little protest, leading to people hounding him for the rest of his life. Story 29. My last day at one of my jobs was on my way to human resources. I saw my boss talking to her fiancé. As I walked by, I pointed at a girl across the room and said, "That's the main one he's involved with aside from you." Story 30. Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Coincidentally, Princip, his assassin, was also in the wrong place at the wrong time. Story 31. A video shows a mother and son driving alone on a highway when they are struck by a plane that experienced some engine difficulties or something similar. To my knowledge, both of them were killed. The plane could have landed anywhere on that road, but it appeared to target them directly. They never saw it coming. Story 32. Shout out to my guy who got caught in the blast of the nuclear bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Story 33. Alfred Dreyfus, my ancestor, was a loyal officer in the French army at a time when they strongly disliked Jews. So he was put on Devil's Island in complete isolation for 10 years. Story 34. Howie Sanborn, former Army Ranger. While he was a Golden Knight, he was training for a triathlon when he was hit by a car. Then, after he recovered, he was training and was hit by a car again. He is now a triathlete on the Paralympic team. Story 35. My best friend's girlfriend fell from a tree and hit her head. Now, she's in a coma, and her mom won't let her get further medical help or allow my friend to see her. It's heartbreaking. I wish I could help. Story 36. Franz Ferdinand survived an earlier assassination attempt by bomb that injured an officer instead. On the way to visit the injured officer, he made a wrong turn and ran into one of the original assassins who then killed him and his wife. This was also one of the events that kicked off World War I. Story 37. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, born on March 16, 1916, and died on January 4, 2010, was a Japanese marine engineer who survived both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings during World War II. Story 38. This isn't even a question. Franz Ferdinand. Literally, the assassin and the target were where they weren't supposed to be, and it resulted in 2 of the biggest conflicts ever. And now we have world-ending bombs because of it.